If this story were a movie script, you'd throw it out for being too unrealistic. A man leaping from a helicopter into enemy fire without a weapon. A man who took bullets to the face, shrapnel to the back, and a bayonet to the gut, and kept going. A man who spit in a doctor's face just to prove he was still alive. This isn't fiction. This is the true story of Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez, a tale of sacrifice, defiance, and sheer human willpower that pushes the boundaries of belief. Welcome to History Crossroads, where epic tales of courage, tragedy, and resilience meet. I'm your host, Adam, and today we dive into one of the most jaw-dropping, heart-pounding stories ever to come out of the Vietnam War. Stay tuned until the end, and don't forget to follow History Crossroads and check out our content on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Let's begin. May 2nd, 1968, Tay Ninh Province, Vietnam. The jungle pulsed with danger. It was a humid morning, the kind where the air sticks to your skin like glue, and death could be waiting behind any tree. A 12-man Special Forces recon team had been sent deep into enemy territory. Their mission, to gather intelligence on North Vietnamese troop movements. But the operation had gone horribly wrong. Surrounded by an estimated battalion of enemy troops, hundreds of soldiers, the team was in a fight for survival. They radioed for help, their voices filled with fear and desperation. Back at the base, Roy Benavidez was listening. A former migrant worker turned Special Forces hero. Roy had already survived a near-career-ending landmine injury years earlier, an injury doctors said would leave him paralyzed for life. But he proved them wrong. Through sheer grit and relentless rehab, he walked again and returned to duty. This man had already beaten the odds, but on this day, he would redefine what was humanly possible. He wasn't on duty. He wasn't even scheduled to fly. But when Roy heard the call over the radio, something clicked. He grabbed a medical bag, kissed his crucifix, and ran to the nearest chopper. With nothing but his training, his instincts, and his raw determination, he turned to the pilot and said the words that would define his legacy. "I'm going in." He leapt from the chopper into chaos. Bullets hissed through the air, slicing the foliage like invisible knives. He sprinted 75 yards across an open kill zone. No cover, no weapon. Just a man running into the jaws of death. One round tore into his leg, but Roy didn't slow down. He reached the team, who were in total disarray. Several were already dead. The others were bleeding, scattered, and barely able to return fire. Roy moved like a storm. He pulled weapons off fallen soldiers, distributed them, directed fire, and began dragging the wounded out again and again. His actions were methodical, instinctual, and fueled by something more than adrenaline. He crawled through mud, weaving between bodies and bullet trails, shouting commands over the roar of gunfire. With each trip, he returned more bloodied, more battered, but undeterred. On his 6th trip through the fire-swept field, a bullet hit him in the back. Another ripped through his abdomen. Shrapnel from a grenade embedded in his head, neck, and side. Still, he kept moving. As he was helping one of the last survivors, an enemy soldier rushed him. Roy turned just in time to see the bayonet coming. It plunged into his left arm. He fought back, killed the attacker, and kept pulling the wounded man toward the extraction point. Then the evacuation chopper was hit. The helicopter crashed in a fiery explosion. But Roy didn't freeze. Amid the wreckage and confusion, he kept the men together. He radioed for more air support. He laid out a defensive perimeter. He moved from man to man, checking wounds, offering words of strength, giving directions. The wounded looked to him for hope, and he gave it. Despite his own injuries, he refused to sit down. He was everywhere, firing, tending to wounds, giving commands, and refusing to die. The fighting dragged on for nearly 6 hours. Through it all, Roy continued leading, bleeding, and believing. It was only when reinforcements finally arrived that the horror of the scene was fully revealed. Bodies lay scattered across the clearing, blood mixed with the mud. Roy was among the still forms. He wasn't moving. His breathing was shallow. His eyes were shut. A medic zipped him into a body bag, and then he spit. As the medic slid the zipper over his face, Roy summoned every last ounce of strength he had. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak, but he could muster just enough defiance to force out a single, unmistakable act of will. He spit. A thick glob landed on the medic's cheek, startling him. The man jumped back, shocked, and shouted for help. Suddenly, the body bag that moments ago was assumed to hold a corpse became the center of frantic medical attention. Medics scrambled to check his pulse. His eyes flickered. His chest barely moved, but it moved. That spit became a lifeline, a signal from the edge of death that Roy Benavidez wasn't done yet. That single act saved his life. He was rushed back to base and eventually medevaced to a hospital. He had been wounded 37 times. Gunshots, shrapnel, a bayonet wound. He spent nearly a year recovering. At one point, doctors didn't think he'd ever speak again. But Roy had other plans. He worked tirelessly to rebuild his strength. He defied every medical expectation, learning to walk, talk, and function again. What others saw as the end, Roy saw as another challenge. In 1981, more than a decade after his heroic actions, President Ronald Reagan presented Roy Benavidez with the Medal of Honor. The delay had been due to the classified nature of the mission. Standing before the press, Reagan held up Roy's citation and said, "If the story of this man were a movie script, you would not believe it." After the war, Roy didn't retreat from life. He became a national voice for veterans, for education, and for young Latinos searching for a role model. He spoke at schools, at military events, and on stages across America. His speeches were raw, passionate, and honest. He told the story not to glorify war, but to honor those who served. He visited wounded soldiers in hospitals, bringing them hope. He lobbied for veteran benefits, education, and public service programs. He often ended his talks with the words, "I do it again for my men," and the people who heard him speak, whether children in classrooms or soldiers in recovery, never forgot the fire in his voice or the message he carried. Roy Benavidez passed away in 1998, leaving behind a legacy that still echoes in the halls of military history. He was buried with full honors at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. Thousands attended his funeral, many of them strangers who had only heard his story and been changed by it. His story, his pain, his perseverance, his triumph, is a testament to what one human can endure when courage overcomes fear. Because sometimes the greatest stories of heroism don't come from fiction. They come from men like Roy. Men who, when faced with the impossible, refused to let death have the final word. If you were moved by today's episode, make sure to subscribe to History Crossroads. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, sharing powerful stories like this every week. If you have a name, a tale, or a hidden chapter in history you think deserves the spotlight, reach out and let us know. Until next time, I'm Adam. Thanks for traveling with us to the crossroads of history.